And today he has something really special. We're having a guest speaker today by the name of Kyle Downey. He's one of our Kingdom Builders partners. You can go ahead and give him a hand. And Kyle, you can come on up. I've only briefly gotten to talk to Kyle a few times, but I can tell he is a man filled with the Spirit of God. And for what he does as a missionary, you got to be filled with the Spirit in order to do that kind of work. And I'm sure he is like, amen, brother, amen, preach that. He, without taking too much of his time, because he's going to share a word and also what the Lord's doing through his ministry. He's one of our many Kingdom Builders partners who faithfully serves, and this church has been also partnering with him. Some of y'all who've been here for quite a while, y'all know who he is, so I don't need any introductions for you guys, but for the rest of the church, they've been serving faithfully in different parts of the world for quite a long time, and they've also been a part of this church for a while, and maybe he'll go into all that, but can we give a hand to Kyle Downey today?
Oh, thank you so much. It is so good to be back. For those who don't know, we were youth pastors here a long while ago when we first got married, and this is a special place for me. The things that you're going to hear from today, they got formed and molded right here. You know, I know they invited the worship, the leadership team to come up and pray, and I just reminded of the many times as Nina was pregnant with Evie, coming up and praying because we lost our first kid, and this was a foundational room for us. And so as we go forward today, just know all the things that you're hearing. Like, many of you played a vital part in forming me and us to be here and to do ministry. If we could put up my wonderful family photo and get rolling. Nina sends her apologies. She got some throat thing at the women's conference, and she can't speak right now, so she's at home resting. But she sends her gratitude, and that is my beautiful family. Evie is here. She's going to be 14 in a couple days. On the far left, we have Eloise, who is 4, and Emmeline, who is 3, in my arms. And today's going to be just a little different. It's going to be a little different from mission presentation. We're going to look at 3 verses from Psalms, and we're just going to talk about how God used those, because we have just only been in Thailand, but this last term was very different. We left to go back to Thailand on December 30th, 2019, for one very holy spiritual reason. I did not want to pay Oregon taxes in 2020, and so I saved $1,000 by leaving then, and it was really a good thing. However, I don't know if you know this, but 2020 was just a little nuts. And so we're going to share a little bit about that. But if we could look at the verses that were quite instrumental. Psalm 16, 8 through 11. I keep my eyes always on the Lord. With him at my right hand, I will not be shaken. Therefore, my heart is glad and my tongue rejoices. My body will also rest secure, because you will not abandon me to the realm of the dead. Nor will you let your faithful one see decay. You make known to me the path of life. You fill me with joy in your presence, with eternal pleasures at your right hand. So the first term, when we were here last time, we just gotten done being in Bangkok, going through language school, learning language and culture. And then when we went back the second time, we went down to Hat Yai, and we serve in what is called the Deep South. The bottom 5 provinces have 3.7 million people. And of that, there's 4,760 Christians. That is 1 Christian per 1,000. It is not a big number. That is not a big number. And then you look at the people group that we work with the near 5 million Muslims in Thailand. And in that people group, you have 1 per 20,000. There's roughly 300 known believers who've come from that. So that is where we are. That is where we work. And so we went down. 2020 rolls around. We were the 3rd country on the planet to get hit by this thing called COVID. And it was very interesting to watch the differences and how it came about. We had a really rough COVID situation. In the midst of our COVID time, We had mandatory curfews at 11 p.m. There was a period of time when the military set up checkpoints by our province where we had to get permission from the governor to leave. We had a $200 fine if someone caught you outside without a mask. And to fly on an airplane, you had to show proof of vaccination, or you didn't get on, period. And so when I look at what you guys went through here in the States, it's like, that's not too bad. I could have handled that. That was pretty easy. There was no government with guns checking to see if you were approved to leave the province. You could drive over to Vancouver if you're feeling crazy or just wanted to go spend time in the Couve. I don't know why one would want to do that. But if you desired to go to the Couve, you could with no problem. And yet, in the midst of that, God decided to send us Emmeline. And that was quite the challenge because we weren't expecting that. We were told we would never have kids again after Evie. And then God, who is greater than a physician, who is greater than a doctor, is like, no, you're going to have an Ellie. And that was a miraculous baby. And then God said, here's an Emmeline. And we were not ready for an Emmeline. We weren't ready for most of it. But we had to ask the question, where are we going to have this child? Because Haya had very strict rules for when you had a baby. Mandatory cesarean sections. You had to go in by yourself. You couldn't see your child for 4 hours as they ran all the tests on it. And none of that is how you have a kid here in America. It's very easy. You have a kid, your kid's with you the whole time except for the brief moment where you go to have them weighed. And so we're like, what do we do? And then there's the difference of the hospitals. Like Thailand is very famous because we have medical tourism in Thailand, and that is awesome. You have free valet parking, complimentary Starbucks when you pull in. You've got marble floors. You're greeted by a gentleman playing a baby grand piano. It is awesome stuff. And Hawaii just has a hospital. It's fine. You can have a kid, cure cancer, set a bone, that normal stuff. But Bangkok has these world-class hospitals. And so we're praying about it, waiting to see. And we started talking to some of our Thai friends. But we noticed that none of our Thai friends are happy. And it hurts a little bit. I was like, we're friends. You should have a little bit of excitement that I'm having another kid. And then come to find out that they're like, yes, Kyle, we are very excited you're having a kid. But nobody who is a missionary has their baby in Hat Yai. When you're pregnant, you leave and you go to these big, nice medical tourism hospitals. And so we stayed. And that was where verse 8 kicks in. I keep my eyes on the Lord. With him at my right, I will not be shaken. God called us to have that baby in Thailand. And he told us to have it there. And that was the first thing we learned in our term, was that your presence is validation in someone's life. Your presence is validation in someone's life. Being with them in the hard times, in the struggles, and saying, it's going to cost me something extra to be here. But it shows that you love and that you care and that you validate them. Now, you're not validating their lifestyle. You're not validating anything they go through. But you're validating that they're made in the image of God and that they matter to God and that they matter to you. And when we did that, then they saw the extra levels of care. That we weren't just coming to be easy. That when sacrifices came, we stayed. And that led to my friend Ajamanope coming to me. And he said, hey, Kyle, we asked for help with the church project 13 years ago. Would you mind checking to see how that's coming? And in my head, I know this thing's already dead. 13 years ago, that's 2 secretaries and 3 computer systems. That thing's gone. No, that thing is buried in bureaucracy. But I checked, and it turns out that I was right. However, it led us to create a website that we used in COVID. Because in the midst of hardships, there's still blessings that you can find. We can use all things. And one of the great things was that I had 2 media missionaries who were supposed to go traveling all across Asia to getting video, building websites, and they couldn't go anywhere. They were stuck in Thailand. And so we were able to take Manope's church that was 60 people. They would meet in this weird, dilapidated warehouse. The bathroom was terrible. The tiles were falling down. The building was this weird V where everybody on the top part couldn't see on the other side. And I'm like, Manope, what if you did 2 services? He's like, we can't get people to stay. I'm like, why? He's like, well, we're in a Buddhist community. In Buddhism, your temple represents the merit that your deity has, or that your monk or your abbot has. And he goes, they go to these temples and they're ornate. They've got the gold plating all over them. And then they come to my church and they hear Jesus and they love the fact that one sacrifice pays for the lifetimes of sins that they don't know about. But they don't believe because they look at my building and it's bad. And so we got Manopa Church. And we were able to get it fully secured, set up, taken care of. Within 2 months of them opening, they went from 60 to 100. Why? Because a worldview got validated. A worldview got validated. And here's what's incredible, is that God gives a beachhead for every worldview, irregardless of what it is. And I say that because one of the things as a missionary, when you leave for 4 years and come back, you've got to figure out what America is. You guys are that proverbial frog in the pot that's just boiling and boiling. You don't know the changes. But I got to tell you, coming back, it's always surprising. You know, one of the things that we do for outreach is we teach English. And I love basketball. Ties don't play basketball because where we are, it's always 120 heat index. Nobody's going outside to shoot hoops in that. That's just too hot. Because of that, though, when I'm talking about sports, I have to actually describe it. Now, when we come back, one of the things that we notice is that love is everywhere. It is everywhere. And I got to tell you, as somebody who teaches English, that's problematic. The first thing is when you're trying to define something, you can never define it by itself. If you don't know basketball, and I try to explain to you the beauty of basketball, I can't say basketball is basketball. That has not brought any clarity about what basketball is. And I say that because there's two things coming back that the world here wants to see. They want to know that they're loved, and they want to know that they're accepted. That's why you see love is love everywhere. And so we have that, and then we look at what do we see in the Bible? Love legitimately defined. Love is patient. Love is kind. It does not boast. It is not proud. It is not rude. It is not self-seeking. It keeps no records of wrong. It bears all things, believes all things, endures all things, hopes. Love never fails. Which one of those definitions is more attractive? Which one brings clarity? And then for acceptance, we see in the prodigal son, a son who takes his father's legacy before he dies, dishonors and shames him. And then he comes back just so he can eat. And yet the father throws him a party. He doesn't beat him over the head with the mistakes that he's made in his life. He just said, what was dead is alive again. My son is back. There is nothing more loving and accepting than God. Our issue is that we have to make sure that the gift is received. We can never change the gift inside the wrapping paper, but we have to make sure that the gift is presented in such a way that it will be heard. God's not done, but that's on you guys. We can never tire of explaining the gospel to the next generation, to explaining the good news to those who come after us, because it will always be different. My generation was different than Gen X, which was different than the boomers, which was different than the silents. Every time it has always had a different representation. But we must do the mandatory work that God calls us to do. Oh, we go to the next slide with the photos of my team on there. We've always believed deeply in team. And we had the shortest missions career in our lifetime. We had a Romanian family who was to come and join us. We picked them up on a Thursday. We went and ate the best Muslim fried chicken on the planet. And it's so good. If you ever want to have it, I'll pick you up at the airport and we'll go eat it. This chicken is incredible. But we picked them up at 5 o'clock. We ate, and then at 9:20 they called. And we'd walked with them for 2 years. They called their missions career. 4 hours from the moment they landed, they quit. We walked with them for 2 years as they finished up Bible school, as they raised funds. They quit. And you have the question of why. And sure, there's lots of reasons. You could look at the Russia invading Ukraine and think that, his mom is a single mom. He's the oldest son. He's got to go back and get ready to defend Romania from Russia coming in. But the reality is that he took his eyes off God. When we take our eyes off of God, we become shakeable. We do things that we don't know and we don't recognize. But here is the thing. We had cared about teams, and we did something that a team leader should never do. We quit recruiting. That is a really bad thing when you're a team leader who just quits recruiting. Like, God, if this is what you want, you're going to do it. We've tried for 12 years. We've had 5 people sign up and never make it down. We're like, God, we're done. 2 weeks later, we had a German lady, Isabel, who's going to come and see us. She was in a different province, and she was looking for a team because that team was a bit toxic. And she came, and I was like, listen, our team does 3 things. We care about planting cell groups in a Muslim context. We care about getting women out of prostitution and building up the national church. If you want to join them and be a part of that, that's great. If you don't, may God bless you on your way. And turns out when you speak directly to a German, they love that. That is heart language for a German. She's just like, done. I just want that. We're like, we're not going to play games. We're just going to bring the gospel. We're going to bring the good news. And so Isabel joined. And then a couple months later, my friend Nikki calls up, and she's like, hey, I did too good a job training my Muslim teachers. They've all been promoted, and they've left the school I'm serving in. And then COVID restrictions lifted, and her community moved back into Bangkok. And she's like, can I come and join your team? I'm like, absolutely. And then this is going to get infomercially, and I apologize for that. But we're not done. Because 2 weeks before we came back, my friend Seth calls up, and he's like, hey, my heart's just burning for the deep south of Thailand. Can I come? I was like, absolutely, Seth. And then we come back to Oregon, and Sean Silveri, the DYD for this district, brought a group of youth pastors here. And one of them kept saying, like, we got to meet up. I'm like, we get it. Let me beat jet lag. And then we finally meet up, and she's like, God is calling us to come and join you. And so we went from nobody on our own effort to 3 singles and a family. God knows what you care about. He's just waiting for you to give it to him. Not one of those nice things where you give it to God, but you check on it all the time, like it's a newborn baby. You're like, okay, it's sleeping, but it's my first one. Is it SIDS kicking in? I don't hear the baby sleeping. Like, give it to God and let it go. Legitimately let God control it. Now, we spent most of our time ministering in 2 places, Klonget and Denok. Klonget is infamous because it's got this stoplight that doesn't matter what time you roll through, you're just stuck there for 6 minutes. It's terrible, it's awful. However, in God's eyes, it's a town of 15,000 with 10 known believers. And so we started doing ministry here, and then we had rented a little townhouse. We were teaching English. We would teach the little kids in the morning. We'd teach college kids in the afternoon. But one Saturday, someone decided to play a fun little prank on us, and they parked their car right where our team was playing basketball, and they left a fake car bomb on the dash. And so we had to call in the bomb squad, make sure that it was fake, and praise God it was. But later that year, at Christmas time, they actually did blow up the train tracks in the town but that connected Thailand to Malaysia. It killed 5 and injured 3. There's a reason why these places have such small numbers. It's because it takes a call. You don't just show up in the deep south of Thailand. You never make it there. Same is also true for Oregon. You don't just end up in Oregon. You can end up in Seattle. You can end up in California. Nobody just ends up in Oregon. You have to intentionally try to make it here. But after that happened, we decided to get a little smarter. We're like, okay, we're doing this on our own. Let's find a community leader who will give us their Mafia Don protection, so to speak, where we can operate safely under their provision. And it led us to our friend Biap. She runs a community of 500 people cinder blocks, corrugated sheet metal, yet somehow they still have a TV. It's incredible. You can go into the poorest slums, nothing, but there's still a TV. And so we were there, and then COVID really kicked up. We were not able to be in the community for an entire year, and we would drop off food and medical supplies to make sure that the community was there, but they were just so poor they asked us not to come in because they couldn't fiscally afford a COVID outbreak. And when we went back, you see the photo on the left, we met up with Bia. At that point, her bed was on the first floor because her heart was at 16% functionality, and she couldn't even walk up the stairs. Being in her mid-50s in a Buddhist context in the slums, socialized healthcare wasn't going to take care of anything. They gave her medicine and just let it play out. And we asked if we could pray for her. And she said, of course. And so we prayed for her the week after. She went back up. They ran the diagnostic tests, and her heart was at 88% functionality. And that is where verse 9 and 10 kicks in. Therefore, my heart is glad and my tongue rejoices. My body will rest secure, because you will not abandon me to the realm of the dead, nor will you let your faithful one see decay. In the midst of that part, King David tosses out the prophecy that says Jesus is going to die and raise again 3 days later. In the midst of that, you see the deity of God in King David in verse 10. And that is what Beab declared. She had the goodness of God on her heart, and she said, I've earned nothing. I'm poor, my husband's poor, our kids are poor and in the slums. We have no karma. I didn't earn any of this. It all came from Jesus. And so we started working with Beab more, being more in the community. But then 5 months later, God called her home. The heart gave out, and she is with him right now. And I will say, for me, that was very difficult. And this is why our quiet times are so important, because I was very frustrated. I was like, God, have you never heard of missionary testimony? Like, don't you know how this works, God? You bring the community leader to faith, and then everybody comes along behind. It's not you bring a community leader to faith, and then she dies. Like, that's not how the story works. But then God, in his quiet time, like, is my word real? Is it true? He's like, John 12:24, unless a kernel of seed falls to the ground and dies, it cannot bear fruit. But if it dies, it bears much fruit. And there's something that has happened being 2,000 years away from Jesus. Jesus called us, as we heard, deny yourself, pick up your cross, and follow me. These are hard words to bear. Because at this point in life, the cross is hope. 2,000 years ago, when Jesus said that, the cross was not a cute piece of jewelry that you hung around your neck. It was a death sentence. It was a death sentence. And praise God, it now means hope. Because the restorative power of Jesus says that what was once meant for death is now life. And the thing is that we don't know what our job is, but our job is to sow. God's job is to grow. Because that's what's incredible with seeds. You go, we've taken them out of pyramids, 1,000, 2,000 years sealed up. We plant those little buggers in the ground. We water them. They grow. If a physical seed can stay dormant for thousands of years, how much longer can the eternal seed of God last? Our job is sowing. Our job is not the growth. Our job is to share the good news and leave it to God. And the thing is that God knows and cares. We go back to that slide. That photo that you see on the right, that's us passing out Samaritan purse shoe boxes, explaining the good news of Jesus 5 months after Beap's death. This Christmas, there was 80 people in that courtyard to listen to Jesus' coming. Just because Beap is with Jesus now doesn't mean that the work has stopped. The other place we spent a lot of time, next slide, was in Downey. Downey is a border town of 20,000. 4,000 of those are prostitutes. 20% of the town is in prostitution. And yet God knows, he sees, and he cares. He called my friend China Rong to go and plant a church there 9 years ago. And when we went there, they were meeting in this run-down old school house. The floors were slanted because it was built on a hill. The school district had left it 4 years ago, and the community had said a fair market rent was $30 a year. That's not good. I know Thailand is cheap. That's extremely cheap. It's because the concrete was cracked. Anytime it rained, it went straight through the roof. It was a mess. And at the same time we'd create a project for Manope, we also made one for my friend China Rong. But Manope got his funds in pretty quickly. But for a year and a half, nothing came in for China Rong. And in that time, he was part of one of our districts, and the mother church called him up. He's like, hey, you have your NDiv, you're talented, you're visionary, you're a great speaker. Come up to Bangkok. We'll give you 30,000 baht a month. We'll give you a car. We'll give you a house. You'll have 100 small group leaders to be in charge of. And that was on a Friday, and he said, done. Give me 2 weeks to send, my church over to the closest church 20 miles away, because that's the Deep South. That Sunday, a grandma came in, and his offerings had been $3 to $5 for a year and a half because they'd shut down the borders. Nobody was going through. And that grandma gave $13, the last of her savings account, for the new church project. And it broke his heart that his congregation had more faith in the project of God than he did. He called back up to Bangkok. He said, I have not been released to come. I've got to stay here. I know it's hard. I know it's difficult. A week later, my friend Mark sends out his end-of-the-year missions giving opportunities, and he includes them as one of 5 projects. And James River, one of our largest churches in Missouri, sees the project. They email him back and they're like, how much do you need? He's like, all of it. I'm like, done. We'll have $145,000 sent to you at the end of the month, and then we'll get the rest of it as the construction project goes. God knows what you're going through. He sees and he cares. It's not what we can do, it's what we're called to do. From that moment, we got the church built up. We got the English group that you see on the top right. 8 of those kids have accepted Jesus, and 5 moms that meet up. The kingdom of God is moving in the Deep South. But I say all that because just because it's moving there, we do also have an issue. I want to show you these 2 maps, and I hope they haunt you as much as they haunt me. So the first map is the gross non-Christian population across the entire planet. That is what the map looks like. Now, based upon that map, where do you think we send the most missionaries? China, that's a good guess. That's not right, but that's a good guess. Iran, that's a great guess. Not right. Pakistan, wrong continent. It should be Asia, but it's not. Yeah, let's go and let's look and see. Next slide. This is the breakdown of the missions population. There is a direct inversion of where we send missionaries to where the need is. The United States, that has the most paid pastors, paid youth pastors, paid children's pastors, that has the most seminaries and Bible colleges, receives the most missionaries on the planet. For every missionary that goes to the unreached part of the world, 30 missionaries go to reached countries, to places that have self-sustaining churches. Why? Because motion's attractive. Motion, we want to jump on board with those things. We were designed by God to sense motion. Thousands of years ago, we needed that. You see something rustling in your peripheral vision, you look at it. We are made by God to be attracted to motion. The downside is that motion doesn't come unless somebody goes. And we are not sending the people to go to the places that have never heard before. And it is not because America doesn't matter. Because America does matter. There isn't a different heaven and a different hell for those who come from a Christian country versus a non-Christian country. No soul is more or less valuable to God. But the opportunity to engage with somebody is not equal. So what do you do about that? I mean, you are a faithful church. What do you as believers do? Well, the single most powerful thing anybody can do is pray. Direct communication with the Creator to call and move God forward. Because people need hope. They need the hope of Jesus that explains who they are as sons and daughters. If we go to the next slide, that is what this group is. This is Chiwit Mai. This is Nina and Isabel's ministry to women who were in prostitution and just came out of it. In Denmark, with 20% of the population being prostitutes, we have seen God do great things. The ministry has seen 7 ladies accept Jesus. Most of them have had to leave because it's just too hard for them to remain in the town with the life that they had. But God has called a couple special ladies to stay and to continue to bring hope and good news. And it's exciting. And you see that photo on the right of that bracelets? Nina just felt called one day to give them a gift. And for 2 of those ladies, it was the first time that they'd ever been given a gift with no expectations, with a gift of gratitude. 30, 35 years old. Nobody had ever said, "You matter." It was always what they could get out of them. Their parents by sending them into the brothels to get money to come back. Men who were obviously looking for certain things. But Nina and Isabel and Ajambui were able to explain the goodness of God and who they were meant to be. And to explain that when you come to know God, the things of the past are gone. You're a new creation. It's an incredible, incredible thing. But there is one verse that we haven't covered on, and that's found in a very unique place. It is found on the tombstone of Margaret and Minka, 2 OMF missionaries who are serving in the region that we served at. In 1974, as they were helping out in a leper hospital, at the start of the year, God told them, "You're going to come home." So they were taken, held ransom. OMF, the mission organization that they served with, just like every organization, doesn't pay ransom fees. 10 days later, they were executed. And yet, the thing is that for every day from 1974, when God called them, they walked in the hope and the joy of God. The Bible says the joy of the Lord is our strength. And on their tombstone, in Thai, English, and Arabic, is "in his presence is the fullness of joy." And my question for you today is, are you joyful? There's some basic tests. When you go to work, do your coworkers rejoice that they get to see you? Are they glad to see you? Do your friends and family just say, "Thanks, God, for sending them to be a part of me"? When you walk into the Starbucks, or if you have your own local coffee shop, are they glad to see you, or is it just a normal customer interaction? Or worse, Lord willing, hopefully it's not anybody like, "Oh man, they're back again." The thing is, these aren't hypothetical. We have to operate out of the joy of the Lord because it is our strength. And I got to tell you, coming back, I have never seen so many angry, bitter Christians. That breaks my heart. Nobody is attracted to anger. Nobody is attracted to bitterness. If we're to be the light in the community, what is that light representing? Is it the good news of the gospel? Or is it whatever political bent you're on this week? Because we don't need more political people. We need hope. And we need to remember that this is an election year. I got to tell you, it doesn't matter who wins. Romans 13 says God's going to put them there. Our job is to display the good news of Jesus to those who haven't known. We have to be faithful in where we're called to be. And one of the reasons why you are so vital is that when you are faithful to call up, to disciple, to minister, to create mature Christians who are communicating with God, then God can call them to go to the ends of the earth. But if that doesn't happen on your end, then the calling doesn't happen on the other side. This is one body that works together. And I say that as somebody who sat in the seats. This isn't some thought process. This really happens. This church has sent people to those places where they never go. We can never stop. Every generation has to pick up the call and the mandate to put the gospel where it has never been before. But I need you guys. I need you guys to minister in Tigard, to minister in Sherwood. Lord, help you if you live in Beaverton to live there. It's not bad. They got a good trampoline park. I just took my kid there. It's fun. But wherever you are, God has placed you there for a reason. You are important and you're vital. If you haven't signed up to follow along with us, we've got a QR code for our Instagram and our email account. Please take a prayer card. Lift us up in prayer. You guys have been tremendous supports throughout the 16 years of our marriage, sending us to Thailand for the very first time. I appreciate this church immensely. When anybody asks who my home church is, it's always Faith Journey. And I appreciate you. Pastor Matt, Pastor Jason, I thank you so much.